Sorry, I just realized I was not recording. I told myself to start recording, but here we go.
All right, first bloopers on you.
Yeah, welcome to ReZume Arts. We're really excited to showcase 5 artists today. So I'm going to tell you just a brief, just brief information because I really just want you to meet them directly. But we have today Terry Honstead, who is actually a mixed media artist, and she's going to be showing some really cool things and telling us about some new things that she's working with. And you can wave when I say your name, then at least they know who you are. Chuck Weygand, who does some really beautiful wood bowls. We have Mary Therese, who does some amazing fabric art. Monika Lawrence, who's an incredible photographer, as well as Paul Albright, who does amazing wooden creations. So thank you again for being here. We're really excited to just kind of learn about what you do, and all of you do different types of art forms. So just, please go around and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you've got going on right now and how things are in this moment for you.
Terry, why don't you start? She started with introducing you, so maybe let's go back.
Okay, I'm Terry Honstead. I live on Gull Lake. 10th Strike is my address. I'm a mixed media artist, painting, some sculpture. I do watercolor, acrylic. I've started doing oil and cold wax. I also do encaustic, and a little bit of sculpture, I guess, is mostly what I do. I sometimes have students in my studio. I just got done teaching a high school girl last week, so that was fun. Let's see, during coronavirus, all of this, I decided to do my coronavirus sculpture. And here you can see there's 2 different mutations of the coronavirus in a cage. However, there's been a leak and one of the mutations got away.
Oh, no.
So cool.
There's also, this is my plague doctor trying to oversee the coronavirus and make sure nothing else gets away.
That's awesome, Terry.
It was fun to do.
What are those made of, Terry?
They started off with styrofoam balls about this big, and then this top one I painted, and then I used pins, push pins to do the little things in between, and the things that stick out are made out of medicine bottles.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Clay on the outside at the top, and then I covered it with resin. And the back one is the styrofoam painted with the push pins, but then I had Gulf teas that I put paper clay on top and painted for that.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I hope you are wearing a mask while doing this.
Yeah, that's right. Using your PPE.
Then I made my little quarantine sign, and I don't know if you can see it. It says stay 6 feet away. Biohazard.
That's awesome.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it was fun to do during this time anyway.
Yeah, it should definitely be shown together, the plague doctor behind you and watching the
Yeah.
virus.
Yeah.
So I wonder, you just mentioned that you worked with a high school student till last week. How did you do this in coronavirus times, the teaching?
Well, we sat across from each other, but we were spaced apart. We did not wear masks, but we had ventilation.
Okay.
And I quite a big house, so
Okay.
I don't that's about it. It's just her and I.
Mhm.
And we're both careful outside of here, so we didn't feel like we needed to have a mask at the time as well.
Mhm.
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 Great.
But it went well.
Good.
Nice.
Mhm.
Monika, do you wanna tell us a little bit about you since you're
Yeah, okay. I'm Monika Lawrence. I'm a photographer. I teach photography and photojournalism at Bemidji State University. Just started this week a new photography class. I'm originally from Germany. I fell in love with somebody who works and lives in Bemidji, and this is how it worked out. So I moved to Bemidji in 2007, 8, and survived all winters since then.
and stayed?
Hey, yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. Maybe Mary Therese, you go ahead.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Mary Therese, and I'm a surface painter, designer, and also artist educator. And I've been busy in my studio painting on silk mostly these days. So I got a great stash back here, things that I've painted. Most of these pieces are wearable art, and I have some things in gallery gift shops as well throughout the region. And oh, I got big. So
That's right. Well, we wanted to show off a little, background, and we are going to give time for, more of that. I know, because you've got a little treat for us. But for now, I thought it would be worth just spotlighting you.
yeah, a little bigger view of things. So yeah, today I'm wearing one of my smaller little scarves. So I have a big stash of those. It's my newest thing, is just a little accent scarf with buttons. But I also paint murals and in homes and throughout the community. I like doing community art with folks. So that's a big passion of mine as well. And I also, my paintings on silk and cotton, I also make window shades as well as stretch the pieces on canvas and make wall art as well. So yeah, happy to be here sharing today with all these great artists.
Thank you. Chuck, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Chuck Weygand.
I gotta show everybody a spotlight of you though, because you've got some really cool suspenders going on there.
Yeah, I don't have any bling on them, but they were pretty good.
They're great.
Retired a few years ago, and I was given a lathe as a retirement present. And I had always been a woodworker, making furniture and toys and different gifts. But I got this lathe, I started turning bowls, and I just love it. And I just found out I had some creative abilities that I didn't know I had. And I'm sure we'll get to talk about them later, but there's things like this that I make, and
Wow.
I can get in later into the creative process of how those things come about. But I love it. And my slogan is, the wood will tell me what it wants to be, because I often don't know what I'm going to make until I start making it. And I'm sure the others have that happen to them too. So the virus has definitely impacted things, because we can't have the gatherings we used to. I miss being able to show my product and interact with people, and I can still do that a little bit, but just not as much. Art shows have been canceled. So you have to find other ways of getting out there and talking to people about your work. So this type of thing is wonderful. This is great. And it's good to interact with people.
Yeah, well, great. Thanks, Chuck. What about you, Paul? Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Paul Albright, and I'm from Akeley, rural Akeley, rural Nevis, in the woods in between. So a lot of wildlife influence, and have been doing this for, it's getting up toward 30 years.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, started early, and we'll have a chance to show you some examples as we go along. But I want to say something about this format. I find it's very interesting. It's an opportunity we probably wouldn't have put ourselves into had it not for the pandemic. And even though we're socially restricted from our typical patterns of life, these are great opportunities for artists to meet other artists in this format, because I know the names, we're from the same region, but it's fun to see the artwork. This is going to be exciting. So.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I love it. You know, I realized that we didn't introduce ourselves. So Holly, why don't you tell us who you are and who you...
I'm not just the creepy lady in the background. My name is Holly, and I work for Region 2 Arts Council. I am the grants manager, and so please be aware that we do have an artist relief grant that's going to be opening on this Monday. So you can go to our website and click login. On Monday, we're going to open it at 8 a.m. So you want to get out there and fill out an application. We only have limited resources available, but we are trying to get them out to artists because, as Paul was saying, you know, this is, and Chuck as well, and Mary Therese, it is a difficult time right now because you don't have the kind of venues that you're used to be able to showcase your art. So that's what I do. I'm the grants manager. So if you have questions, you can email me and I'll help you out.
She's very helpful. Yeah,
it is very helpful.
Holly.
Yeah, any questions you have, any concerns around grant applications, doubts, or anything, Holly is the person to speak with. And I am Catherine Gonzalez. I work as a program assistant with Region 2 Arts Council, and just really happy to be able to facilitate a way to have all of our viewers be able to know about you as artists. And more than anything, I just love being able to hold the space for you to talk about you know, like your art amongst each other as artists. Because this is really about, you know, your art. And what I love is each one of you has a really different style of artwork. And I'm just really curious to find out, like, what is your process? How do you even approach it? You know, each one of you comes at it a little bit different. And I just would love to hear, you know, and feel free to just have, yeah, tell us a little bit more about, you know, how do you even approach it? How do you get started?
Well, okay. I know I'm out of order here, but I wanted to propose a thought that we could probably share ideas on just as part of the round table here. But I've often thought about there's basically two types of art that artists do. There's a spectrum in between. And just like literature has fiction and nonfiction, art has a representational and non-representational, and or whatever term. And then that's my point. I really like to make an effort right now to change the terminology from representational, which sounds a little snobby to me, to familiar and afamiliar. What do you think?
Sure.
Love it. Yeah. Is that kind of like abstract versus representational?
Well, right. I mean, we all fall in the spectrum from either super realism to totally non-objective. And so just for the people who are viewing in on us, you know, I'd lean more toward the representational or the familiar side in my work. So just threw that out there for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good analogy, Paul, because I look at the bowls that I create. Some of them are purely functional. Somebody wants a salad bowl or a cereal bowl or a fruit bowl, but I have other wood that I look at, and as I start working it, I realize it can be more of a piece of art that is purely for display and not just function. And I don't know if that's where you're headed with that, but I see things kind of the same way. There's the functional and there's the abstract or the artistic part. That's kind of where I come from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I started to deal with arts in a very general, broad way, I did not have that easy an access to what's called what's considered being abstract art until I discovered, because I think I put myself too much under pressure. I have to understand it, and if I don't understand what the artist wants to tell me, I'm somehow stupid. I don't get it. And I thought that that probably is not the idea of art. And I somewhere realized that it's maybe just the texture or the color that touches me, even if I cannot touch it, because typically we are not allowed to touch stuff.
Yeah.
But and so this makes it then still an experience to me, even if I'm not in the mindset of that artist. Don't get even close to that, and maybe find something very different than the artist actually had in his or her mind. So, and so far, I don't really make this distinction anymore between art that is, you know, that is realistic and art that is abstract. And yeah, Chuck, as you said, I can have just an object, a subject, a painting or a sculpture that is just very abstract, and it kind of fills a room or makes a room. And,
Right.
and yeah, so maybe just what I think about it. So
Yeah.
Do you want to say something, Terry, about that?
Well, I was going to say, mostly my art was representational for a long time. Now it's becoming more abstract, and I think it's because, well, each year I focus on one aspect of, or one thing that I'm interested in. For instance, one year I did mostly portraits for the whole year. One year I learned how to mix colors. I mean, whatever I decide to do. Well, this year I kind of have two things that I'm working on, and one is becoming more abstract, either purely abstract paintings or kind of abstracted landscapes. And then the other thing that I'm working on this year is cold wax and oil, which I had never done before. So I'm learning how to do those two things at the moment. So I guess my particular artwork encompasses the full spectrum, but that's just, I can't do just one thing forever. I have to, for me, do something for a while I'm interested in that thing, and then pretty quick I want to do something else. And I may go back and forth to different things, but yeah, I can't just focus on, oh, like that one is a poured watercolor behind me, and I did poured watercolor for one summer, and then I kind of got tired of it, and then I went on to something else. So that's kind of where I am on that.
Terry, do you feel that your style, it sounds like your style may, or technique, I guess, could influence the direction of, or processes, I guess I should say, changes your perspective on where it falls in that spectrum. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you kind of read off on from the material as you're working with it, or is this something that kind of you go into kind of with a mindset?
It does the whatever that all influences each other. For instance, if I want to paint a picture of an elephant and I get an idea of what I want to do, my feelings on that elephant and what I'm doing with it will influence how I paint it. For instance, one time I did a poured watercolor of an elephant, and then another time I was more in the mood for something more realistic. And so that time I did an acrylic, and I think I had mixed media too. But like with this cold wax and oil, I'm having fun doing the abstract. So it kind of seems to go together with it for me. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that's all I will do with it.
Right. Cool.
So, yeah, I think one influences the other, and it kind of depends on my mood and what I want to say about what I'm doing at the moment.
How do you know? I'm sorry.
That's okay. That also decides what medium I'm going to use.
Mhm.
If I want to do something, then I may have a strong feeling that this should be acrylic or this should be mixed media, or, you know, depending on what I'm doing.
How do you know when you work on one piece? How do you know when you're done with that?
Oh, that's a great question, Monika.
Just ask somebody that same question, and I got an answer from her today, I think it was actually. But me personally, sometimes I'm not sure when something is done, and if I don't know, I will set it aside and keep looking at it. And then over the next week or whatever, sometimes I can decide. It's just like when I don't feel I can add something more to make a difference, that it's done for me.
Yeah, I kind of have the same thing. The wood
Yeah.
tells me when it's going to be happy, and it'll tell me when it's happy, but
Right.
set it aside and look at it for a while too. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
letting it sit for a while, getting kind of emotionally detached a little bit, maybe.
Yes.
Time.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mm.
Well,
Same.
photography must be different because you take your picture and it's done.
It's not.
Not done. Right?
Not at all. No, not at all. This is actually when it starts, because there is some editing. So I work in what is called in photography in raw format. So that means this is the entire data. So it needs to be worked, because otherwise the photo, just as it comes out of the camera, looks pretty flat and the colors are not vibrant. So it's really no editing is put on it or to it. And I have to do that. So this is actually really the second part of that creative process. And there it indeed can be it's always a struggle with me, or for me, to know when is it done, when is it too much editing, when it is not. So I should say I sometimes have two different work approaches. So I also freelance for NPR News, and there in journalistic photography, there are way more limitations what I can do with a photo. So it's almost no editing other than brightness, contrast, things like that, maybe color correction if there's a color tint. But I cannot add, remove anything. So there are strict rules. That's why the other part that I work in is kind of more, well, I don't know, fine art approach, where I have the freedom to edit whatever I want, though I try to keep it really I generally do not add or remove anything. I really have this kind of ambition to have the photo ready right in front of me, and then just do some basic editing. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on.
What kind of things do you edit?
I edit. Sometimes for instance, I convert photos into black and white from color. So there's that, and then I work with sometimes harsher contrast, sometimes less contrast. I edit the colors. Right now, I experiment a little bit with what is called split toning. So it is what's in film called color toning, color grading. So adding a certain mood to a photo without, But again, this is something that I'm experimenting for a new project that I'm going to start on. I'm not quite there yet, so I cannot really demonstrate that yet, but maybe I can share some photos.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I switch over to some images that I have prepared. Can you see it?
Yes.
And I enlarge that. So these are a few images that I took when I still was back in Germany. So I love dance. I love especially dance, what's called dance theater. For a short time, I was part of a group, and I'm fascinated with photography of dance because I'm so fascinated what light can do on a stage, how it sculptures the dancers. So it's a kind of an unreal world there in our real world. So, and I try to find these moments. Mostly there's very low light, so very little light and stage light. And so I try to find these moments where they are perfectly still for just a fraction of a second and hold that moment when the light hits them, or when there is a dense atmosphere through kind of fog, whatever they use. So when I came to Bemidji, I quickly noticed that there are lots of artists hidden in the woods. And I randomly, met some, but didn't know really a lot of people. And so I had this idea to find these artists and ask them if they would be okay if I photograph them during their creative process, so during their work. And I think, Mary Therese, I actually started with you. So this is actually, I think I have you in the images here too. This is actually Jeff Berger, a potter. And during while he's working, Monika Hansmeyer. And you see, sometimes I go the color, I go black and white, both can work. Sometimes I prefer black and white when there is too much going on in the background. For instance, it focuses in that case here on her more Albright in a creative pause moment. Is a metal sculpture up in Popowski, and here we have Mary Therese. And then later on, I started. Well, I said I don't want to go through all photos right now, so I actually stopped sharing now. It led me then. Oh, I mentioned earlier that well, I survived all the winters. And this actually led me into a project that I went out with my camera in winter, in deepest winter, because I was so fascinated how calm, how serene, how peaceful things can be, but also how wild in the deepest blizzards and the most brutal temperatures. And I started to love that. It's so weird. Last year, after the last blizzard we had, I was actually sad, and I thought, what's happening with me? I think I'm becoming Minnesotan.
Yeah, I remember, Monika, I remember seeing a gallery exhibit that you had at Watermark Arts Center with that escape.
Yeah, maybe if I just quickly jump back to that, sorry. So just a few of that. I was actually so lucky that the show happened, the show happened before. Oh, no, I cannot show it. I try later again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you for sharing. And Mary Therese, I just love the question that Paul posed. I'm just thinking of you and how you, in a way, blend the familiar and the unfamiliar, as I'm going to quote, Paul's terminology. Maybe tell us a little bit about, like, how do you approach that, that familiar and unfamiliar realm?
Well, I think that for a long time I was really working with representational art. And when I switched over, watercolor kind of led me to batik, working with hot beeswax and dyes. And it's such a fluid, I mean, I did learn to paint with watercolor and control and do very strong representational work. And once I started working with the hot wax, it was all over the place, and I love the fluidity of it, and I just wanted to respond in a looser, juicier way and I've always kind of been attracted to more abstract art, but kind of, you know, my headspace was, oh, this is, and also being an artist that kind of has to live for sales. You know, it's sometimes what people expect or want from me. I kind of lean that way, and you know, but I'm always kind of struggling, kind of finding my own way too. And I have found with painting on the silk that I can kind of go back and forth, and people still love it. And so I kind of just approach like things that go through, and also responding to the medium. You know, I was thinking about you, Terry, the way you kind of have this focus and you're trying different mediums. Well, it's hard for me to jump back and forth a lot of times. And so I've kind of been doing the batiking for probably the last 10 years. And you know, it's a little different when I'm working with community art, with acrylics and painting in that style with people and kind of guiding and encouraging. But it's hard for me to find my own expression going back to acrylic now. And though it's kind of in my heart because those were my foundations, and I kind of want to bring that non-representational, just exploring with the acrylic medium back into my life. And so I've been trying to get the courage to do that just with this time alone during the pandemic. It's almost like I have a lot of inventory, of shows were canceled. I can't quite hit the button for another order of silk. And I have a lot of canvases stacked up on my acrylic paint. So this is inspiration to me, listening to all of you talk, and yeah, and just looking for some other avenues almost that this time is allowing us to open new doors, because we have time and we're kind of isolated, and there aren't the shows and the demands right now for our art. So it's kind of like, okay, go home and think about what it is you really want to do and express and explore. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Yeah, it's exciting. And as far as knowing when something's done, that's kind of, that's a strange question, because just ironing this morning some pieces, it's like, oh gee, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't change, but there's always things that you can go back and do to a piece of silk, you know, with fabric paint, rather than working with beeswax, and the design is there, but you can kind of enhance it with fabric paint. So, or go back and put a little more deeper dyes there. So I'm always kind of in my mind, wow, I could really kind of maybe this or that, you know, especially when you're working with developing a lot of pieces, which I kind of have. When I'm in full production, I have stretchers going all over and a lot of pieces going at once. So it's, you know, it's a lot different working on one piece and just focusing on that. So
Do you have to do yours in, oh, what would you call it?
stages.
Stages, yes.
Yeah.
Do you do it, so that's why you do multiple things at one time?
Yes, yeah. A lot of it is slow, waiting for the dyes to dry, or building up your layers of wax. And I could pop over. I actually have some great photos from that wonderful time Monika came over into my studio. So I have these black and white pieces. And let's see if I can get to my PowerPoint. So
well, while you're doing that, Mary Therese, maybe this is a good time. Yeah. Oh, you got it.
Okay. I'll just, I didn't want to jump to that, but just, yeah. So working with the,
oh, wow.
The stretcher frame. So these are the stretcher silk pins and rubber bands that stretch the fabric out.
I think we don't see what you want to show us.
Oh, you're
not seeing it, Monika? I am.
Oh.
Huh.
Seeing an owl.
Interesting.
Oh, no, that's not what I was showing. Right.
Oh.
But
Okay.
yeah.
That, yeah,
Okay,
we are
I'm
seeing
out
it
of that.
now.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just go back. I don't need to.
No,
Click on the one that you want to show us.
I have these photos here, so I can jump over and maybe show them from.
Yeah, or we could just, somebody else could, Paul, you could talk about that representational.
We come back to that.
Okay.
So Mary
and
Therese, do you want to, I'm sorry, Paul, I just want to,
Yep.
Mary Therese, do you want to just go ahead and stop your
Share
screen
screen.
share?
There we go.
Oh, thanks. I'm like, where did everybody go? Okay,
No worries.
sorry.
I felt like Owl Man. Couldn't even speak. All right, back to my own question. But I guess to touch on Mary's a little bit, she brought something interesting, or somebody did, about when you I guess it was you, Catherine, when you know when you're done with something. And I think that's really a lot harder for the artist to figure out than, I think it sounds like there's a few teachers in the crowd here. And I think we've all been in a situation where, there's a student working on something and they've reached that point where they're going, oh, that's fun, that's fantastic. And then they keep going on it. And you're going, oh, you feel like taking the brush away from them, because sometimes it'll go downhill. So
True.
anyway,
I've
that
done
speaks
that
of the,
before, Paul.
it speaks of my, yeah.
I had a great piece, and then it was like, oh, this is great. And then I was thinking, Monika, I'm thinking I can add a little, and then it just completely went downhill.
Yeah, and it's keeping this alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had bowls blow up that I should have stopped when.
Right.
Paul, can you show us something of your woodwork, maybe?
Sure. And my process is so incremental. So it's for me to answer my own question as far as between familiar and afamiliar. Those choices are kind of made toward the beginning of the process, because once I figure out what I can make with a log or a piece of wood, I like to stay within the framework of a log. I just fell in love with the fact that there's a cylinder, and how many things I can do and tweak around that aspect of it. So I like to limit myself to a point, and then test the limits. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll show you what I'm from a phone, so I don't have the same quick options here, but we'll see if I can make this go. Okay, I'll show you well, sometimes I'll do clay studies.
Wow.
This was for a mermaid, and let's see, and that ended up being a piece that was combined with a black walnut, and the bottom part was pieces of copper that were shaped and.
So Paul, that was clay on wood?
No, that was just a study for the piece itself.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That'll be
so
to talk to Paul and Chuck about their different approaches with a log, right?
Yeah.
So when you see a piece of log, where do you get the idea of, how do you know what's in there, whether that's a chair or a bear or an eagle? Do you take sketches or make sketches, or is it all in your imagination already?
Well, I'll go with one example. I think it happens differently to different pieces, but in this case, let me start with I don't know what you're seeing. Probably nothing.
You're frozen.
Okay. All right. And okay. I came up with this log. And can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. That is just a choice piece of white pine. That is at that point, I think it was 12 feet long, but it was about 11 feet long. And I've been messing with using different angles, like I just suggested. And then I came up with an idea for wolf, or actually wolves that are on the run, and kind of mixing the, I guess the idea of singular and plural. And so I want them to, are they like, is it like one wolf, or are they three wolves in a pack setting, or are they, you know, to be seen in succession? So that's where I came up with this. That's the same log when it was completely done.
This
And
is
so,
one log?
Oh,
my
wow.
gosh, that's
Wow.
amazing.
yeah, this was that, whoops, that was the same log you just saw.
Wow.
And so without taking a lot of time on this to describe it, once I realized what I wanted, I had never tried this, we'll call it almost a high bas relief. I don't know how you call it. It's three-dimensional, but there's still a relief qualities about it. It's to be almost seen frontally, which is the side view. But part of the idea was just to make sure, of course, they're all attached to one another. You know, there's no weak areas, so there's a certain amount of, a lot of thinking and so on. And then I wanted a little variety of characters, so I gave them that. And I also worked within there's a certain flow. I don't know if you can see it, but if you start with the wolf in the front, it goes, it waves down, waves up, waves down, waves up. So there's a hidden organic flow to it, which I thought would increase the intention.
Wow.
And then let's see. Yeah, so I guess just starting this project was probably the most difficult, because I pretty much had to visualize them almost in a finished form before I started, which isn't typical, but it set up a nice challenge.
Wow.
And do you work on chainsaw? Do you work like hand carving? Like, is that a mix?
Yeah. It's I started with a chainsaw, and then gone into you know, more finely detailed things. And along the way, I came up with this little funky tool. I don't know if you can see it.
Let me spotlight you so that we can see it really well. Hold on a sec. Okay. Oh, wow. What is that?
And yeah, well, it's as aggressive as it looks. They have these available on the end of a 1200 RPM electrical side grinder. And I thought, you know, I don't want to kill myself. So I came up with this thing. They're just parts from the hardware store. These are standard washers and a bolt that I've taken the threading off, and it's sandwiched between a perforated edge to hold the teeth of the chainsaw to a point. So there's a little slack. But anyway, this then fits in an angle grinder. It's pneumatic, so there'd be a hose coming out of this end, and then this gets fastened in. And then what I'm able to do with this is 3 different varieties of cut. You know, one is more aggressive, one's more passive. But this little tool here is a kind of a intermediate tool between the chainsaw and the hand carving. I like hand carving as well too. But
Hey, Paul, we received a question on Facebook about the dimensions of your wolf sculpture. Can you give us an idea of how big that is?
Sure, I can give you exactly. It was 32 inches on the very flare end. I took 1 foot off of it to get rid of the checks. And so I bought it at 12 and ended up at 11 feet long. And then, so it's 30 inches, I would say basically in a round. And then so the smaller end's about 28 inches. And so I won't give you all the processes of making that appear as big as it did on the end, but there's a certain amount of liberty I took to having to follow that core line and also utilizing the fullness of the log. So the legs are all strategically placed so that it gives an impression of a life-size wolf, even though if you saw it in person, you'd go, oh, that's life-size, but actually they're, you know, I guess a little smaller, but it's kind of hidden within the design. I went too far with that explanation, but yeah.
So how big a space did you need to hold it?
Well, it's already been sold, and so it's at a commercial area, so they have the room. And but I'm working on 2 pelicans right now that are with that same idea of kind of skewed shapes within the same form. It's not so much realistic, you know, if you were to really break it down, but that's what I'm into right now.
Cool.
Nice. Well, I'm really curious, Chuck, you know, like thinking, we've talked a lot about visual arts in many ways. And, you know, I'm thinking, Mary Therese, when you were talking, I was thinking about both Paul and Chuck in terms of, you know, when something happens, it's not like you can just kind of like fix it, right? Like, you know, how do you approach? I'd love to hear your process, Chuck, in comparison, you know, because you guys have such a different perspective on woodwork. It'd be
yeah, that's a good question. I have some things I can share with you, but Paul and I have one thing in common, that starting is the hardest part. But then, yes, you can fix something, and I'll show you what I mean. There was one piece I just sold recently that started out much differently than it ended up. And I had some issues, and all of a sudden the top half of the bowl just blew off.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a dent in my wall. I set it aside for a while, and then I went back to it, and I turned it into something entirely different, and it looked really nice. And I wouldn't have ended up with that if it hadn't blown up on me.
Wow.
But I'll share the screen here, and I've got a couple of slides that will show you what I mean about starting is the hard. And you know, Paul can identify with this, so let's give this a shot here. Share, and
okay, we're seeing it.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to one of my slides. So this is one of the things that I ended up with. And I'm going to show a couple finished products before I show you how I start. So I have things like this that I think look really interesting. There's a lot of personality there, but it didn't start out that way. I didn't know how it was going to start out. And here's some of the other product too. And you can see all the personality them have.
So different.
They're so different from each other. But how, you know, I take a lot of walks in the woods, and I talk to trees. This is one that's sitting in our yard, and I'm never ever going to cut that down if it's alive. But look at the wood on that thing, and those 2 trees are hugging each other.
I know, that's amazing.
Some beautiful grain in there. But I will start a lot of times with pieces of wood like that, you know, the burls from a tree, and one came from our yard, one a neighbor gave me, and the other one I purchased. So I'm starting from entirely different places. And I look at that and I think, what do you want to be? And, you know, something like that, I'll look at that for weeks and try and think of how I want to start it. And, you know, it's going to turn, I'll take my, my lathe, and that's one of the lathes that I have, and I'll just work it. And I can end up with something like this.
Wow.
I started out with the thing on the top, and I end up with the thing on the bottom. I really don't know until I start what it's going to be like. And so that's kind of my process. And before I go, I have to show you my trusty labs or workshop.
Oh, is he your supervisor?
That's my supervisor. She gives me inspiration and at least tells me when it's time to go out and go potty.
Oh, that's so great. You know, hearing you talk about your process, Chuck, it reminds me a lot of going back to Jeff Berger, Monika. You know, I went in one of the studio tours way back in the days. I went and I think of pottery, you know, like I think so the theme around what I'm hearing with all of you is that, you know, you have an inspiration, you go and you start and you do your art, and you have a relationship based creation, right? You're co-creating this piece, because it's not just you willing yourself on that experience. It's like you're having this constant conversation with the piece that you're creating.
Yes,
And
this piece right here is a really good example.
there's pieces you can't control, right? And that's the magic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I was just going to say, this is a good example
Let me
because
spotlight it so that people can get a good view of it. Sweet.
it's very rough and natural on the side, but I can turn something like this from the center, and it just,
Yeah, that's amazing.
I didn't know that was in there until I started. So it's a present. You open it up, and I think Paul probably feels the same way. It's that wood is a present to you, and you have to open it up, and there's something like inside, and there it is when you're done, and it's wonderful. I love it.
I love that. I love that idea of it's a present and just waiting to be unpackaged. Just like all of you, you are presents just waiting to be unpackaged. This has been such a delightful conversation, and I just, you know, really love just all the mix of approaches and you know, challenges and opportunities. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to connect with you. You know, so we have just a little bit more time today, and we want to capture and make sure that everybody knows how to get hold of you, what's the best way and best approach. And for everybody out there, the thing I want to say, the easiest path is go to our webpage at Region 2 Arts Council, the letter R, the number 2 arts, ARTS.org. And if you go there on our blog post for today, you will actually have everybody's link and contact information. I just wanted to let you know in case you're not in a place to write it out, but I'd just love to have you, because I know, Mary Therese, you have a really special way that people can purchase items from you going right now. Would you like to start us off and let us know how we can connect with you and how people can come and look at your stuff?
Well, I've started offering Zoom Marketplace where I can meet with people on Zoom, and I can go right now as we are, and I can show you pieces and go through the pieces, and then if there's a particular piece that interests you, I could model it or get a little closer with the view. So
can you show us how you do that with a piece?
I was going to say, we want to see you model your piece.
Well, let's see. Well, this piece is Aretha's wearing. This is my Aretha. But so as you can see, this is totally an abstraction where, and there's different kinds of silk. This is silk chiffon with the shawl.
Nice.
Cool.
And so then
personal Zoom fashion show.
Yes.
Yeah, really a great way to think about how to connect and allow people to be able to see the pieces before they purchase, right?
Yes.
Not just a flat screen image, but just this total interactive purchasing possibility.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So
I think, can I just quickly say something? Because there was actually one of my questions. I see we're running out of time. If anything good comes out for you from this weird time, I think we all were forced in finding different places in ourselves and different opportunities to get out. And I think this is a great new way, Mary Therese, you probably would never have thought about.
No.
So the chance of the crisis, it is really wonderful. And I love the colors of your scarves.
Oh, thank you.
yeah. And Mary Therese, if I remember correctly, you have a website as well as a Facebook page, as well as an Instagram account, right?
Mm-hmm. It's all marythereseart.com or marythereseart@yahoo.com is my email. Your Mary Therese Art Instagram, Mary Therese Art Facebook. So stick with that across the different social medias. And
so listeners, Mary Therese Art, that's the way to go, no matter what medium. Awesome. Thank you. Chuck, what about you? I know that you have a really, you have an Etsy store. Would you like to?
I have an Etsy store, and also starting in September, I will be the featured artist on blankcanvas.com. So it's a virtual art show. This week they're doing artists from the Southwest, and in September I will be on there. And the website will be up soon, hopefully. So I'm working on another website. So Etsy, Blank Canvas, and this information will be on the Region 2 site. I assume we can get.
Yes, correct. We are going to continue to be able to, for anybody who catches these recordings later, we're going to continue to have a way that you can go to the segments and then be able to find the artists that you're looking for and know exactly how to find them. So as artists open up new possibilities for connections, they'll share them with us, and then we'll be keeping that updated. So you can always refer to us as a place to go to find out. And if you're having problems, give us a call. We're always available. Chuck, I also remember that people can find you directly at farmers markets, or is that closing up now?
Almost done for the season. There's still a few weeks left, but Green Scene Farmers Market in Walker.
Great.
And then also there's going to be at the Red River Event Center in Akeley in October. There's an event, so I will be there as well. October 10th.
Excellent. Yeah, that reminds me, please make sure that you let everybody know if you're going to have an opportunity to have people visit with you, at an event or an opportunity for educational opportunities like Terry, with this one-on-one learning. Thank you, Chuck, for reminding me to make sure that we speak to that as well. Terry, how about you? Speaking of Terry.
I am on Fine Art America and also pixels.com with my name, Terry Honstead. I also have Instagram, which is the same, Terry Honstead. Facebook, it's Terry Drescher Honstead. So let me think. I do a December tour of artists around Gull Lake up by 10 Strike. There's 4 or 5 of us that have we've done it for 2 Decembers now. Mm-hmm. And then when they have the studio cruise in Bemidji, I'm part of that usually, although they're not having that this year. So I'm willing to have anybody come to my studio if they just give me a call first. I'm willing to have them come in and see whatever.
Great. So people can call you to set up a studio visit. You can email Terry as well. You can find her on Instagram, website, and Facebook. Great.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. And it sounds like also you can learn with Terry.
Yes.
So you can call her and set up that opportunity as well. Paul, what about you?
Well, it's a pretty narrow avenue there, but I would say people usually call, and then we talk through projects, and that's kind of how it usually starts. But so it's usually by my phone, and then email, of course. I used to have a website which I let go, which I'm not that disappointed about. Facebook seems to be a place where people can see examples and so on. So that's what I use for references for what I do, and also some communications and stuff. So
yeah, and if I remember correctly, your Facebook page is not under your name, right? It's under a different.
No, yeah. My sister helped me set it up, and it's considered a business Facebook. So there is a difference. So.
And it's Albright Sculptures?
Yes, it's Albright Sculptures. Unfortunately, the S is the end. But yeah, that's where they can reach me and contact me.
And I think that also on that Facebook page, if I remember correctly, you have your all your contact information, phone number, email, as well as the Facebook page, right?
Correct.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Paul. Monika.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram on the Monika Lawrence photo, and you can also contact me through Instagram, so DM me. I have a website, monika-lawrence.com, where you also can connect to me via a contact form there. And if you're interested in any prints, let me know.
Great. Does anybody have any places right now where people can go and view your art in addition to online formats?
Just the same as Paul. When I'll put the contact information, but or the others to call for appointment.
Awesome. Great. Well, it's been a real pleasure to have you be part of this first time kickoff ReZume Arts event. For everybody out there, I really want to say that the instigators of this event, this concept came out of an artist listening session that we held. And Monika had talked about the opportunity of taking pictures, you know, giving the opportunity for the world to see these amazing artists, just like she showed you on your photographs. And there was so much energy around that we decided to make it happen. And so thank you all viewing this to make this happen. Please connect with our artists. We will continue to showcase. So this is a bi-monthly event. So the next one is September 9th, which is happening, and you can just stay connected with Region 2 Arts Council so that you can see more of these amazing artists and find out ways to connect with them, because again, it used to be really simple and straightforward. Now we want to make sure that you know how to find them and give you that opportunity for that intimate connection similar to the art fairs and festivals. So be sure to have your questions, and if you want to keep asking questions, I'm sure that there will continue to be some engagement on Facebook. Hope you have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.